Hello ladies and gents, PepperBelly here, bringing you guys an Interstellar Marines update video. This is the 10th update to the Interstellar Marines multiplayer component, because they're still working on the single player component, and it's going to be a while. They're hoping to have the prologue out by the end of the year, this year. So if things go according to plan and as we'd like to see them, then the end of the year, we will see the Interstellar Marines prologue single player component, which would be awesome, because we've all been anticipating that. I don't know if you guys are aware, but I'm pretty sure most of you people who are subscribed to me by this point know that I am pretty goddamn excited for this game. Pretty pumped, because Interstellar Marines is pretty much all my wildest fantasies compiled into one game. Everything I love put into one awesome game. And the whole point is Interstellar Marines is supposed to be like a very rich narrative campaign shooter, so a nice story to it that's supposed to be very in-depth. If you're thinking type of games like Half-Life, you know, a very intuitive, great narrative put into it with the classic old-school Rainbow Six style, very tactical, hardcore nature shooter, as well as like the sci-fi elements of games like System Shock 2. Those are the three crucial ingredients that are built in this game. And right now, obviously, they have the multiplayer component out for those of you that have pre-ordered it or want to support the developers, because obviously their Kickstarter failed a while ago. And of course, now they have this, and it's gone through numerous changes. So that's the premise of this video. I don't even know why I'm talking about all the other crap. I'm just kind of briefing you on the game if you're not entirely familiar with it. And if you still aren't and you're kind of curious, you can go and look it up yourself, because I strongly suggest you do that, because the game looks awesome. Regardless, this video is going to be talking about the recent updates that basically changed this game by a huge margin, and it feels almost entirely different. And for those of you who have never played this game beforehand, probably will not notice the differences, but if you've played it, I mean, the video I uploaded back in December during Christmas time when I was playing this exact game in the video, if you compare the two side by side, you will see there's some striking differences there that are actually completely, it's almost like I'm playing a whole new game on the same maps, because the whole overall feel of the game is changed, but for the better indeed. So let's start talking about some of the changes. One thing they added immediately, which caught my attention, was crouching, and it's dynamic. It's not just like, oh hey, I can crouch now. It's like, I can just kneel on one knee. It's a little bit more significant than that. It's not just gonna be like, oh yeah, crouching like most video games where it's just like one height the entire time. There's like 3 separate heights when you're crouching, and you may be like, what in the hell are you talking about? That sounds a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, and it really isn't. I mean, you look at Arma 3, and that has a kind of that's way more complicated than what this has, because this is very like on the fly, kind of very easy to switch between stances, and even then it's not as significant or has an important role like it does in Arma 3. So let's get started on the details. Basically, when you are stationary, so if you're crouching and you're stationary, you're not moving, you will have the lowest possible profile. You will be in a crouching position where you're pretty much sitting on the back of your ankle, and you are just very, very low profile. When you press the space key or the sprint key, whichever one you have it set to, it'll actually let you pop up without aiming down your sights. So if you're behind a wall and you can't see over top of it, and you press that space key, it'll elevate your head just like a foot, like just a little bit higher, so you can see over top and shoot as well. If you aim down your sights, it'll give you a slightly higher peak than just a traditional space bar or regular peak, if you want to call it that. We'll refer to it as the first stage peak. And then when you're aiming down your sights, it'll be the second stage peak, which basically makes you peak up higher, giving you more field of vision and more angles to shoot over that cover to basically slay more bodies, which is what's important, is slaying bodies. Know that. It's rule number 1 of tactical shooters or shooters everywhere, is to slay bodies. There's another thing I also noticed as well, and it's the true first-person immersion system that they've updated. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm going to elaborate for you. Basically, it's trying to give you the immersion, the feeling, the sensation that you are in fact this human being that you are staring through the eyes of, wearing the mask, the helmet. You can actually raise that visor up or down. You can see the HUD element is a little bit more integrated into the aesthetics of the game. So it's not just like, oh hey, there's a HUD and it's blocking and obscuring your vision without any particular reason other than the fact that it's giving you information, crucial information you need to know. they've actually kind of integrated it into the helmet itself. So if you raise your visor, it'll actually move up with the visor and disappear or turn off, whatever the case may be. So it actually has a purpose, which makes it feel like, okay, this heads-up display is something that's authentic, something that can actually exist in the real world. If I had advanced armor that I get to wear in this particular game, I would actually have that. And as you can see right there, when you zoom in to aim down your sights, it'll actually push the HUD element back and zoom in just into the center of your visor, allowing you to have more field of vision without any obscurity of the HUD elements, which I think is pretty impressive, not to mention clever, how most games just don't have anything in that kind of sense. And this game does things that most shooters don't, in a way that is pretty damn satisfying compared to a lot of games out there, and it's very, very nice. They've also added this whole new, like, it's in relation to the first-person enhancement, immersion factor. Like, the weapon sway is slightly different when you're walking around, the way you look, the way the weapon kind of lags behind as you're turning, and the way it kind of whips, and you know what I'm talking about? Like, you can see as I'm looking around, the weapon responds to my movements. It gives you this general, like, this whole other feeling that, yeah, okay, I'm actually manipulating and holding this weapon in my hands. It feels different compared to how it did prior versions of this game, as well as the movement. The movement actually feels more realistic. I feel like I'm an actual heavy, solid individual moving around the world before, compared to being like some floaty hoverboard style individual where I'm like a hovercraft just sliding over terrain. It actually feels like I'm interacting with it. Every footstep feels like, okay, I'm actually landing. There's almost feedback to everything. It's almost like you're playing with a vibration controller, you know, a controller with a rumble or a vibration, whatever you want to think of, without actually having it. It's just the visual feedback gives you that sense of actual physical feedback that you would feel from the game, which is excellent. In games that can pull that off, like, I applaud you, because that's very hard to do, to actually make it feel like, hell yeah, I'm in this world. I actually feel the things that are going on in the game, giving me the sensation that, yeah, this is like ultimate immersion factor. And that's what this game's actually going for. They want to maximize the immersion, which is why I'm like absolutely loving how they're doing this and going about it so far. They're doing an excellent job. They've also added your foot. I know it sounds weird and strange, like your legs, what are you talking about? If you look straight down, you'll see your legs. I don't remember that ever. I mean, that could have been in there before, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't ever remember seeing that. Every time I look down, I would not see my legs. And I noticed it recently, and I was like, hell yeah, more immersion factor. Crucial things that need to be added to games nowadays. It's absolutely unacceptable to look down and see nothing in today's genre of shooters. Technology, the things we have to make games nowadays, there is literally no fucking excuse for not having legs or a torso or whatever when you look down at yourself, because you're just literally a floating camera and it's weird. Or self-shadows. If you can't even see your own shadow, there are some games that do that, where you don't portray your own shadow, and no matter what you do to alter the ini files, the configuration files, whatever, you can't get your own shadow to show up, which is just abysmal. That shouldn't be a thing. And I'm loving the way the aesthetics and the look and how they're going about overall crafting this game into something that's going to be so damn excellent. It's such a gorgeous looking game, and it can only go up from here. And the fact that it's built on the Unity engine, I can say this is one of the best Unity engine based games I have ever seen. Like, seriously, most games made on Unity engine, as far as I'm concerned, from what I have personally seen, aren't of the quality of this. And this is nowhere even near being completed. This is just the basics of what they're getting down. The whole point of this multiplayer component is so they can flesh out the controls, flesh out the overall movement and the first person mechanics, so they can actually start developing the single player story and getting more intense with the level design and everything else on the side that needs to be completed for the single player portion of the game. But getting back into the things in terms of updates. So yeah, they fixed the first person. They made it feel a little bit different. They've added the HUD elements, and they've added crouching. Those are pretty much the main components they've added and changed. There's one gripe I have with this game as it currently stands right now, and I can't tell. I've tried to test this out, and it's very difficult to test this, first of all. And I've tried numerous times to define whether or not it's client-side or server-side. And I'm starting to believe it's more on the client side, and it has to do, or in potentially server side. It's very hard to say, but mainly it's server side. It's kind of a mix of both. It's very hard to determine, that's what I'm saying, because, and this is related to hit detection. I'm talking about when you're shooting at someone, and how responsive it is. And the responsiveness of this game is just foobarred. It's absolutely terrible at times. If you have more than 10 players in a game, you will start to notice that your shots will just not land on target no matter what. You will be aiming right at the individual, you will pull the trigger, it'll be point blank, and it'll just like, it won't register, or it'll take too long, or you'll pump way too many rounds into the guy and he still won't die, or it'll take a whole entire magazine for him to finally drop, or you need to lead targets by like a huge margin, which is completely unrealistic because at ranges in this game, you shouldn't have to lead a target that much, especially how slow moving most of the targets in this game are. There's really no excuse for it. So that's probably my only real gripe at the moment, is that just the abysmal hit detection. And the reason why I'm saying it most likely can be server side is if I'm playing in a server with like 2 or 3 people, which I've done, and I'm going in a firefight up against them almost instantaneously, no matter what ping, and all the pings vary insanely. I'll join a US East server, which was like pretty close to where I live, hence why I picked US East most of the time, and the ping will still be like 100 or above, or 200. Sometimes it'll be 80 or 90, but it fluctuates so sporadically, it's kind of hard to determine what the actual definitive ping is, so there's nothing I can really do in that regard. Besides that, the point is, the hit detection is abysmal, but when there's low numbers of players on the map, for some reason, it's very responsive. It feels almost instantaneous when you're shooting at someone. Leading targets isn't much of a big deal. I'd imagine playing LAN would be the ultimate way to experience this game, considering there'll be absolutely no latency between both clients. But as it stands right now, the servers, the hit detection is just, like, terrible, and they need to work on that in future alterations of this game, because it is very important for hit detection, and a tactical shooter, reflexes and accuracy and positioning and all this stuff are huge factors, and if someone can shoot me when I've clearly pumped 2 or 3 rounds in their face first, it's extremely annoying, and it's just a complete turn off to everyone who has to deal with that crap when you clearly should have killed someone and they don't die. And close quarter engagements can get very finicky at times because you'll turn on your laser and you'll get close to someone and you'll start shooting at them, and it's just like the whole thing is just fucking crazy. There's bullets and debris and chaos everywhere, and you'll spray so much rounds at the target and the accuracy will be all over the place because for some reason these guys can't shoot worth shit from the shoulder because you're not firing from the hip. Mind you, I hate games that say firing from the hip unless you actually see the animation of a character holding the weapon at his hip. Example would be Titanfall. Titanfall actually shows that. They're actually holding it by their hip, which is strange, but somehow they make it look cool. No one fires from the hip, ever. Unless you're like firing a light machine gun, and I'm talking like a heavy light machine gun, one that you have to fire in the prone. Because submachine guns and assault rifles, you're gonna fire from the shoulder. Firing from the hip is the most untrained, unprofessional thing you can do, and considering these guys are the best that humanity has to offer, I'm talking like special forces times 1,000 because they're fucking interstellar marines, right? They're traveling to different planets, finding signs of intelligent life, and eventually making first contact and going to war against them. You need the best, and the best don't shoot from the hip, despite what some 80s action movies may show. They will shoot from the shoulder 99% of the time, and they can do so very effectively while moving. One thing, I've actually seen people talk about how this game feels Call of Duty-ish, and it's like, I want to slap that guy in the face, because that's just not true. There is no hint of, I'm aiming down my sights, therefore it's Call of Duty. Like, go home, because as far as I'm concerned, that's what you do in real life when you're shooting at a target. You aim down your sights. That's real. Point shooting is also incredibly realistic. That's a real thing as well, except a lot of games just don't get it right, except for games that don't have aim down sights, period. Then point shooting for some reason seems like a more feasible thing, but they need that crosshair spread, the bloom effect, to mimic that, okay, my shots obviously aren't going to be 100% accurate, which is a real thing. But point shooting and shooting down your sights, very realistic things that are done, alright? So saying that it's Call of Duty style, kind of, it turned into COD, you know, you want it to be more like Halo, or you want it to be more like realistic games, you don't really know what you're talking about unless you've ever actually went out and shot a weapon before. It's entirely possible to move at a tactical pace and shoot in close quarters. When you're breaching a room, you're not casually, slowly strolling through that door. You're getting through that door as fast as you fucking can and killing everyone inside the room. That's how it's done in real life. You're not going to slowly walk through that room. You're going to run full on, like you're getting in that room. Put it this way, if the first guy hesitates, usually the second guy in the stack will literally grab you and push you through the door. That's just to give you some incentive, some idea of what it's actually like. That speed and aggression are real things, and being able to shoot under those circumstances is incredibly important, and games that don't mimic that properly really frustrate the hell out of me. So that's just one thing I want to get off my chest, and Interstellar Marines does it well. It does it well enough. Obviously the accuracy is a little bit finicky whenever you're kind of running, because the tactical pace in this game is considered the run as it stands right now, and it kind of is all over the place. The recoil is just insane when you're shooting from this, like from the shoulder. It's like it's all over the place. The recoil is just insane, which is a little bit excessive compared to what it probably should be like in real life, but it's still a better adaptation, like a more authentic feel than what most games out there do. And as far as I'm concerned, Interstellar Marines is doing it amazingly right now, and this game is turning into something I am looking forward to immensely, because this game is very well crafted. Like, it's almost as if these guys know what it's like to actually be tactical, which a lot of people who make tactical shooters, like take down Red Saber for example, even though they apparently had, you know, past military experience, seem to just do it completely wrong. And these guys have no military experience as far as I'm concerned, and they're doing it right. I don't know why that is, but it's the reality of the situation. They're doing a fantastic job with Interstellar Marines, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final product as it finally releases with an actual campaign, and hopefully the campaign can live up to the standards that they kind of set in motion, because I know a lot of people, including myself, have high expectations for it. Almost a little bit too high, to the point where I may be disappointed because my expectations were too high, but then again, that would be my fault, not the developer's fault, because I'm the one kind of going crazy with the idea of what I want to see. But also with Update 10, final thing I want to cover is the optimization. This is something I noticed kind of went down the tubes. That sounds kind of weird, but it went from being pretty good in terms of performance to like average. Because I was always getting 100 plus frames per second no matter what on the highest setting all the time with no issues, and now I'm getting, on some maps like this one in particular, it'll drop to 40. I've actually changed the options quite a bit. I was messing around with it. You can see I'm doing it right here, testing to see if I would actually get more frames, switching it to the lower graphics setting or the higher, whatever. And I was actually playing around with it, switching it even after this match, testing to see the frame rate drops, and no matter what setting it was at, the frames would always be consistent the same, no matter what. So it's like you might as well just play it maxed out, because it looks better, first of all, even though it may just be a slight looking difference, and the performance is the same, relatively. Like, it's not very different in that regard. So the performance of the game seems to have gotten a little bit worse due to this update. I'm not entirely sure why that is. I can't tell you why that is. I have absolute faith in 0 Point Software. This company does an excellent job, and I know for a fact it will be rectified soon. It's not even game-breaking, first of all, because it performs better than most games out there to begin with. It's just that there is a frame rate drop, and even though it's running at a lower frame, it still has this nice, graceful, smoothing factor to it, where it's not like an instant frame drop or, you know, those really insane stutter effects that happens with pretty drastic frame drops. It's pretty consistent, and it'll smooth out. Like, it's almost like you won't even really notice it unless you're really paying attention. But I notice it, I've seen it, it's there, and playing at 60 plus frames consistent in this game compared to 40 to 50, and it fluctuates a bit, is a little bit noticeable, to me anyway. But does it really break the game? Hell no. The game is still fantastic the way it is right now, and I'm looking forward, like I said, to its final release. So that was pretty much everything that was significant in Update 10, as far as I'm concerned. Because everything else is just pretty much icing on the cake. It's just kind of like minor things that you don't really notice as much in game compared to these drastic changes that were released recently. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you guys for joining me on this video today. My name's been PepperBelly. I'll see you guys on the next one.